So I'm back. This is the next day. We did the 5 colors mixed into, I think we mixed them into about 15. And then the 30 colors were mixed out of the 7 in the last 7 colors of the 12-piece set. Now, this piece already went ahead and I varnished, and I accidentally, you can see the texture in here, forgot to remove the silicone before I varnished. But I still believe that the varnish barrier, I've put 2 of them on here now. I've taken this is dry, so we can demonstrate it dry. When you're doing a varnish barrier over silicone so you can resin on top, at least this is my method, I'm taking the Liquitext varnish, liquid varnish. I love, love, love this stuff. Okay, and you're applying it in one flow, left to right. One motion. Not this, because this breaks it up. This actually breaks up the structure after you put it in. A nice even flow straight across. If you miss, you see an area that you've missed, go straight across with an even flow. You can get one layer. After that's dried, now I've waited a little bit longer on this one, but you could pretty much revarnish after 2 to 3 hours. Do it the different direction. Same thing. One direction, but you're going to do it in the opposite. We did it this way. This time I did it this way. Now why? We're weaving a barrier. I've had too many gorgeous swipes that I put resin over the top of that I've pitted, that has pitted, I've sanded, has pitted again, I've sanded. It's heartbreaking. And when I discovered this method of doing my varnish barrier, and I do a minimum of 3 layers, like this has to have its 3rd layer on. Like I said, this has a little bit of a texture to it because I didn't get the silicone off. My piece here that I did yesterday, I swiped this yesterday morning and it is now, I think, 4 a.m. Tuesday morning after the Easter holiday. I'm going to wipe the silicone off and do a varnish barrier. I'm going to do the 3rd barrier on here. So I've done it one direction, another direction, and at this point it kind of really doesn't matter, but we'll go the same direction. But first, let's get this off. Now, 70% alcohol will work. That's your regular rubbing alcohol. But since I happen to have a little bit of 99% in here, that's actually what I'm going to use. I'm just squirting a little bit directly on my piece. Less water, better. At least that's, to me, the chemistry says less water, better. One more time. Let's just make sure there's a little bit of something coming off. Not much. Don't be worried if a little bit of something comes off. But by using the 99%, there's no water in there to activate any of the water-soluble paint. Okay? Now while that dries, which it almost feels completely dry, I'm going to do the 3rd varnish barrier on this top one. This one we did first. And I'm using the sponge because you don't get brush strokes. I spent a lot of money on a very expensive varnish brush, and it's a beautiful brush. I walk by and pet it in the cup every time I look at it, but I'm afraid of ruining it. And you also get the brush strokes where these sponges, and they're throwaway, even though I've been re-washing this and using it. You can wash it and reuse it till the foam falls apart. But I like it because it leaves no brush strokes. So let me get the bucket out of the way and move it to the right here and get a close-up for you. If there's any way to get a close-up on this. So one single direction, I'm turning it as I'm doing it. So because the sponge, the very nature of the sponge, as you're pushing down, it's pushing the varnish up through the sponge. Now this looks a little bit dry here on the top. Need a little bit more. I want to make sure it's adequately done. And this one kind of worried me because I had left the silicone on untouched. And yet this is a pretty good experiment. You too may suddenly grab your varnish, put it on there, and go, oh my God, I didn't wipe the silicone down. So this will be the test to see what happens. In theory, resin levels out, right? These pieces are both going to be resined right away. So if this levels out, then the little bit of pattern I got there from not cleaning off the silicone is going to be a moot point, okay? So we're going to set this aside to dry. This is the one we just wiped down with the 99% alcohol. Same thing. One direction. If you go back and forth, like I said in the beginning, you're breaking down the structural integrity of that layer, okay? So we're going to let this dry. Now I'm going to do 2 more layers to this. I'm going to wait 2 hours, do another layer. I'm going to wait 2 hours, do another layer. And then I'm going to wait 2 hours. I know it's an experiment. What did I say? It's about 4 or 5 o'clock this morning. So that in theory means that by this afternoon, I'm going to try to resin this and get this video up. It's going to be a short, sweet video. We're going to resin the 2 that we did off of our PolyPour kit, the 2 swipes. Incidentally, I call this the Oreo cookie swipe. I think I'm going to do one more intentionally because I had swiped with white. I didn't quite like the look that I had, and I re-swiped with black, and boy, I'm glad I did. So I'll see you guys in a couple hours. Actually, I'll probably see you back in 6 hours after I've had to do 2 more layers of varnish on this, and we're ready to resin. So I'm back. I've lacquered both of them. And I know I don't normally mix the resin on camera, but if anybody's new, never even done resin, you put equal parts of A and B in and mix it for 3 minutes. Try not to whip it too much because all those little bubbles that you see in there are going to have to come out. You know, you hit them with your heat gun or some kind of heat, maybe a torch, and they will come out, but equal parts. That's one thing I can say about the resin in the United States, whether it's Art Resin making it or Stone Coat making it. There's 2 manufacturers in our country right now that have good, clean, low VOC resin that dries very clear, and according to the tests and the pictures I've seen, stays clear over time, which is a really good thing. So I've got about 60 more seconds. We'll get this thing sped up, and then we're going to put some resin on our pieces here. Again, I hardly ever see anybody actually mix resin on camera. I thought, okay, for the absolute newbies, it's not as scary as it thinks. I was like, as scary as you might think. I was the same way as everybody else. Oh my gosh, it's sticky. Yes, it's sticky. You can't get around that. That's why you have a spray bottle with alcohol on your table at all times for cleanup, and a great fluffy roll of paper towels. But yeah, as I started pouring this out this morning, I started thinking, you know, how scared I was of playing with this at first. You know, the things I know now, it's no big deal to just whip up a small batch of resin to do a top coat on these things. And like I said, I remember how terrified I was because, first of all, it's expensive. It is not a cheap habit to get into. You have a limited time. It manipulates color different than acrylic pouring does, acrylic fluid art does. So it was a new venture for me. Now, I know you guys have seen me play with the PolyPour for a while and the acrylic for a while because I focused on learning about resin as much as I could for a few months. And now I feel a bit more balanced. Now I'm going to try to be able to put together our primer element acrylic products with how they work with resin, and maybe we can see how they combine. Okay, so this was the swipe from the first one. So you're going to see still a little texture in there. I had put the varnish on without cleaning off the silicone. But the beautiful thing about resin is it's self-leveling, and this is all going to look like glass. This is the piece I just finished, what was it, night before last. Yeah, I swiped it and loaded up that video Monday night. It went up Monday. I varnished this Tuesday, and the only reason I didn't resin this last night is I actually went to bed. So this has been swiped one day, varnished the next day, and this is day 3, and we're putting some resin on it. So the point of this exercise is just a simple, quick top coat. This will probably be one of the fastest videos in history I've ever done. And again, if you're new to resin, you guys that are resinistas, you don't need to hear all this, but if you're new to resin, it does self-level. I'm going to pour a generous amount in the middle in this one. I hope you can see there's little bubbles in there. I have my heat gun. I got this thing off of Amazon. I love this gun. So you're not cooking the resin, you're simply warming it, and warming it pops the bubbles. If you notice, I just gently warmed it. So these are the silicone brushes that they use to do hair. They come in different widths, sizes, edges, and they actually clean up better than what it looks like, because I was really bad in the beginning and I wasn't cleaning them up. The resin will peel off, but for the sake of the video, I'm just going to use this one that I've got right here. You can use popsicle sticks. Now this is a 10 by 10 canvas. When you're working on canvas, you want to make sure that the resin hits those edges, because by the very nature of the canvas is going to want to put all the weight in the middle. So you want to make sure you spread your resin out all the way to the edges so it hits the edges. It doesn't have to go over. If you want it to give you a little bit of dimension on top, a lot of people will tape them off. I'm just doing a very gentle touch up here with making sure that it hits the edges and stays on the edges, that it's going to stick there. Because again, the very nature of gravity, even though this table is level, trying to get just up to the edge without really going over the edge. Not that it would be bad to have a little resin smoothed over my black corners, but my biggest concern at this point is making sure I have a nice even application on all the edges. And well, it looks pretty darn balanced now. I'm not seeing any pitting, thank God. I was worried about by not wiping off that silicone with some alcohol. I use 99% in my video just because it has less water in it, but any alcohol and a paper towel, wipe off your excess off the top. And again, you have to look at every angle. Cock your head back and forth without trying to tilt the piece, because you don't want to tilt the piece and have the resin slide back and forth, right? So based on what I can tell, I'm not sure I'm going to be able to get a close-up. See, I'm getting some nice glass. It's a risk by me lifting that up there, but I wanted you to see how the varnish will protect your piece from being pitted with the silicone. This is going to turn out really pretty. Now, when our colors dry, whether they're primary element colors or the resin art colors, once they dry, you get a beautiful shimmer under that, almost like dichroic glass, if you know what dichroic glass is. Again, I'm touching up one more time. I'm looking for any edges. Now, you can come back and keep checking on this. Art resin starts to, get a little firmer after 45 minutes. So you can keep coming back and checking on this. And you can also warm the resin up with a gun just to get one final smooth on the edges. And some people use that as a technique though. They'll re-warm it because they want to get texture in their piece. Okay, so let's do the one we just did, because we know that first piece was done on Friday before Easter, and this was painted on Easter Monday. So let's see what happens when we put this resin down on, this was the 30 color swipe. I called it Oreo cookie because I had used white and black to swipe. Same thing, take it out to the edges. Edges come first. The center's always going to have plenty of resin because you poured it in the middle there, right? Oh, this is going to give me all these turquoises and greens and the little pop of purple. This is going to give us a kind of a dragony scale, abalone shell look. Oh my God, look at that. It's going to be so pretty under the resin. So one thing about resin and glass, anything that will magnify shimmering color, if you like the bling, and a lot of us do, we like the look of that, we like the color shifting, but I cannot say how worthwhile it is just to take your time, don't rush this part, and make sure every little edge, make sure every little edge has been hit, is well saturated. You want to look for anything that could have floated in it. Now I have a resin chamber, I have racks with a PVC cube I built, and then I sandwiched plastic and a wooden hood. I manufacture my own little drying chamber so I can do big pieces, but you're going to want to cover this up. You could even cover it up with a cardboard box upside down if that's all you've got. You just want to keep something from flying in there, right? Because if you're going to go through the trouble to make this pretty piece, right? Now, as this is a straight piece, you might go, what would I do with this? But I can see this as a base coat for a resin piece, especially the textural abstracts that you see that are along the line of the geode look, but we're getting more to where there's more and more textural abstracts coming out, more textures, more glass, more concrete. We're using the natural mica flakes. This would make a nice section in there where this color stays preserved and comes through, and other areas may be blocked out. I'm not sure. But I wanted you to see this process. We're going to heat this one more time. Again, we're not cooking it. We're just moving that warmth over the top of the piece just to lightly pop the bubbles. You see, now I'm noticing, even though I did these corners, right, it's pulling in slightly. It didn't actually go in the center out. It could be that I have more in the middle. You know, it's looking pretty fine here. Just make sure that it's even. Like I said, I can't stress this part. Don't rush it. You look at every angle. I can't tell you how many pieces I've done. I was in a hurry. Either I was filming, or I was excited, or I was nervous because especially in the beginning, about the amount of time that it takes to dry. And I didn't do this. I didn't really take the time to say, hey, does this look like glass? Now that looks like glass. That is going to be cool. Look at that color shifting. Look at those scales. Imagine scales done with those colors. Now, if you're interested in that look in your resin, we do have our product Resin Art, which mixes in the resin to color it. What you're looking at right now is the primary elements that we mixed in case you missed the last video. We mixed in our PolyPour. It's an acrylic polymer designed to make our primary elements into a fluid acrylic, and you don't need any additives, water, pouring medium, nothing needs to be added. It's ready to go. And that's what I did the swipe with in this. But if you're inclined to want to actually color your resin, and if you've never seen us before, we actually have a line on www.colorart.com, which is called Resin Art, the product line, which you can actually colorize your resin. Okay? Now, I happen to have a little resin left over. I don't know if I've got enough to do a small piece. I think I'm actually going to cover up my balloon dip, my favorite famous balloon dip. This has not had any varnish on it at all. It's just the balloon dip from that day. And I promised everybody I was going to varnish this. So now we can see what straight, or I was going to resin this. We'll see what straight resin looks on top of my balloon dip, because I have a little bit of some clear left in my mix. Get my other two pieces forward here. I might even have more for the second one, but let's get this first one done. I did this balloon dip a few weeks ago, and I had people ask me, oh my goodness, is that really your first balloon dip? I'm like, yeah, I had no idea what they meant by, you know, how hard it was, because I got lucky first time out. But same thing, we're going to take that resin all the way out to the edges. That way we can see what the resin looks like directly on top of the PolyPour. Now I know for a fact I did not use any silicone in my dip. I was just using straight paint. And this is my first experiment with using the PolyPour. And the balloon. So good, same thing. I'm just going to make sure that all the edges are properly touched up, well lubricated. Oh yeah, look at that. Look what happens when it goes under the resin. It is beautiful. That's the PolyPour, kids, mixed with the well, I should say that's the primary elements mixed with the PolyPour. It's not just the PolyPour. It's the primary elements that makes it all shimmery. And the video is there how I did the balloon dip. That's that 1 minute balloon dip I posted all over Facebook and Instagram. But I'm loving how I can show you how it comes right back to super shimmery as soon as that resin's put on top. A nice resin coating. I have got to say, this is so beautiful under the resin. It is just gorgeous how that top and bottom and the olive and the purple shimmer and shine. It's no, it's not dry yet, but boy, this is turning out gorgeous. And here's the warmer toned one, if we can get how shimmery that is. I'm not sure if it's going to be quite as dynamic because there's so much of the same color. trust me, this hot red is shimmering like crazy. And for grins and giggles, since I have enough resin left, I didn't realize how much I was mixing up. We're gonna do this black dip. There's a little section here where the paint, I think I played with it too much with my, bamboo skewer. But we know the resin's gonna level that out, but I think on black, this is really gonna pop. I'm not too proud of the composition because my leaves are coming right on the end of these petals, which is not realistic. But I wanted to see what this color combination under the resin would look like, because I'm going to do the same color combination but get my composition in place. If you didn't see this, this is the black reverse flower dip. I had laid down a little bit of white to put my color over, and I had lubricated the base with just plain clear polypour before I did the dip, not black paint. That way the color stayed really super vibrant. I wasn't trying to dip and manipulate color that was melded in black. So here's the rest of my clear. Probably too much actually, but that's what we got left. All I'm doing is warming the resin. I know I keep repeating myself, but it's important that people get that. You're just warming the resin, you don't cook it. And maybe it's because when I first started with resin and I was terrified of it, I kept boiling the resin. I was wondering, why is it smoking? Oh, because you're cooking it. You just want to warm it so it glides and it pops the bubbles. It's the only point to heating it up. Since I have plenty here, I'm going to make sure that my sides are covered. I have a lot of extra resin left in that cup, so not only am I going to get up to the sides, but I'm going to get my sides, my black sides covered too, because I have enough to do it. And I'm not going to waste it. I'm going to pick up from other area. Since it's just clear resin, I can pick up where it needs to come off and kind of get the sides covered. You don't want to waste a drop of this stuff. Resin is not a cheap hobby to get into. The base of it's about twice as expensive as acrylic, but it's so worth it. Once you finally delve into it, it's absolutely amazing. Okay, we got to spread out to this side too. We didn't get that corner yet. Okay, even strokes. It will self-level, but you want to make sure, again, this is an 8x8 canvas. Still the same thing. Canvas by its very nature has a slight gravity sink in the center. That's why most of us don't use resin on canvas unless they're very small, like 8x8 and 10x10 I think is probably the best. I've done it on larger ones as a top coat, and I've had to support the backside with cardboard box or paper in between to try to keep it from sagging. You know, when you're ready to really jump into resin, you just need to jump into MDF boards. My friend Tammy Anderson says she's been getting some Rubbermaid shelves at Home Depot, cut them in half, and it's giving her, I think, 15x15s or 15x30s, and they're only $8, and the Home Depot will cut them in half for you. So there are a lot of options to do wood surfaces. Just make sure you prep your wood right. Wood has to be prepped and sealed. Even painted with white house paint is good enough to seal the wood so it doesn't absorb whatever you're putting on there, because wood's a fiber and it will soak up whatever you put on there. I've probably done overkill on smoothing this out. So the whole point of this exercise, what do these colors look under resin? Look at how much this is gonna shimmer onto the resin. This is stunning. And the balloon dip, you just have to let it dry. Since there's no silicone in it, you don't have to varnish. I didn't varnish this. just as I didn't varnish the white balloon dip. This was the one done with the paper towel. The white one was an actual balloon dip. One more little glance at this gorgeous piece up front. I am amazed at the colors of this paint. I just cannot believe how gorgeous it looks. Some of that texture is just because it was raw. Well, no, I spray painted the canvas, so it wasn't raw. I spray painted the canvas. But you can see the black reverse dip that I have on my YouTube channel. You can see how I made this. I want to thank you for joining me, and I hope you have a good day. Bye-bye.